Welcome, comrades, to our conference today. Just start off by asking if everyone has all the relevant papers. You should have the statement, and you should also have a statement from the Socialist Workers' Party, which won't be voted on. We have a statement from, we have a motion from Cardonald Branch, and we have the Socialist Party Scotland. We've got a statement from them as well, which again is background, but there is an element of theirs which will be for voting. It's all on the paper. I think it's quite clear, but if anybody's got any questions, you can just throw them at us. And it'll become clearer as the whole thing develops, hopefully. So we'll hopefully get into a good discussion and debate, and things will follow through. Can I apologise for the slightly late start? I'm going to go off Tommy. He said I had 10 minutes to go and get a coffee, but it took them ages to get the coffee out. So apologies, because we had a bit of a journey coming through just in terms of finding the place and everything like that. We weren't really sure of the road. So we're here now and we're ready to start. And we'll just start off. Tommy is going to speak to the statement, which is in the name of the Solidarity Executive and Tommy, and then we'll take from there. I'll ask for people to indicate who's speaking on what statements. We'll get them up ready so that we can keep things flowing, and then we'll have open debate after that. So hopefully it should go quite smoothly. So without any fuss, it doesn't need any introduction, and I'll hand over to Tommy.
Thanks very much, Rosemary, brothers, sisters, comrades. I just did some news there from Gordon Morgan, which is a wee bit disconcerting. Apparently the Labour Party in England and Wales are launching their election campaign today, and one of their slogans is "Vote over fear." I don't know if we've got legal action or not. We may have to look into that. Comrades, I'm hoping that we can have a good and productive discussion today. There is obviously disagreements within Solidarity in relation to the attitude that we should adopt in connection with the general election on May the 7th. And I want to say from the outset that we should not be afraid of disagreements. I'd much rather be disagreements openly and comradely and in a mature fashion than we say something to somebody's face and then say something different behind their back. I think we want to have a culture within Solidarity where when we have disagreements, we talk about it. It's a mature thing to do, and I think it's the best way to build trust within the movement as well. So from my point of view, comrades, I hope that today we have a debate that is conducted not on the basis that we are enemies, but on the basis that we are friends and comrades who are having a disagreement. You have them in your families all the time, don't you? Doesn't mean you don't go to the birthday party because you fell out with a brother. It just means that you have a disagreement, and I hope that we can have a debate on that basis. There is a statement here that I'm going to speak to, which was proposed by the executive on the basis of trying, on the one hand, to put forward a political position that we think is unique as far as this general election is concerned, while also trying to maintain maximum unity within the ranks of Solidarity. At the very end of this statement, there is a point made which I think is vital, and that is that we are not a democratic centralist party that insists on iron discipline. So we are not arguing that whatever is decided today, all Solidarity members have to abide by that, or they will be held to pay, and there will be brimstone and the likes getting brought upon any member that dares not to agree with that. On the contrary, we are stating categorically that regardless of what is decided today, each Solidarity member is free to act within their own conscience. Solidarity can take a position, Solidarity members are entitled to take a different position. I do have to say, if Solidarity as a party was fighting an election in an area and Solidarity members in that area were campaigning against the Solidarity candidate, then quite frankly that would be very contradictory and unacceptable. That is not the position that we are facing here. We are facing a position where Solidarity as a party may take a position that individual members don't agree with. It doesn't mean individual members have to abide by that particular decision. So I hope that that is crystal clear, that we're not arguing that you take our way or it's the highway. That's just not the type of party that Solidarity is trying to build. We've always tried to build a tolerant movement, an active movement, a combative movement. Yes, when we're involved in campaigns, when we're involved in opposition to whether it's cuts or whether it's injustices, yes, we try and promote maximum unity. But we never ever forget that this is a party made up of individuals, independent thinking individuals capable of working out for themselves their own political actions consistent with their political principles. I would argue, brothers and sisters, that we are facing a unique general election. A unique general election. Where the wee chap just downstairs there, I was speaking with Tricia and Belle and Jenny, and we were talking about one of these end seats where Margaret Curran is the sitting member of Parliament. And Belle made a point about the general discussion, and we don't even go into the details of it, but she made the point about, but if it comes to a choice between one person and Margaret Curran, then I'm afraid I can't vote for Margaret Curran. And that to me illustrates the uniqueness of this general election. Because at 51 years of age, I've never experienced a general election in Scotland where we would ever be talking about the possibility of Labour losing in Scotland. In fact, what we're looking at is a possibility of Labour being wiped out in Scotland. That's what makes this unique. This isn't just another general election. I, for many, many years, involved in the socialist movement under various banners, and many of us here have been under various banners. We've always tried to retain our principles, but we might promote those principles under various banners. I have consistently, throughout that period, always argued when it came to elections that it was important to have a socialist candidate, to have a socialist pole of attraction, in the recognition that we're not going to win, but it's important to raise the ideas. Brothers and sisters, if this was just another general election, that's what I would be arguing for. That's what I would be arguing for here. I am hopeful that the conference will accept that this isn't just another election, that this is a very unique opportunity to change the political landscape of Scotland and to have an incredible effect on the landscape across the whole of the UK. I think this election effectively is about breaking the British state. That's what this election is about. I think we have the opportunity here, not with a bullet, not with a gun, not with a catapult, but with a vote to effectively break the reactionary British state. You see, in those circumstances, I don't think it's acceptable when things change that we just do the same thing. I think as socialists, we have to think about our actions. We have to have a strategic approach, and we have to have a tactical set of plans that are appropriate to the problem that confronts us. I don't think this question of who we support in the general election in May the 7th is about principle. I'm old enough within the socialist movement to remember the arguments that elections aren't about principle. Elections are a mere snapshot of the class struggle, for goodness sakes. A snapshot. I agree with that. I don't think it's a principle. I think it's a tactic. I think it's a tactic. And what we are presented with here is the opportunity to maximise the yes vote, the yes movement behind a party which is not our party. Not a party that promotes our principles, but a party that is to the left of the Labour Party, wouldn't it be hard? But is to the left of the Labour Party and stands for the breakup of the British state, for the cancellation of Trident, and stands on an anti-austerity programme. Yes, people will say quite rightly that their anti-austerity programme isn't as good as ours. Absolutely. But see, when you look at the choice that's there in mainstream politics, it is an anti-austerity vote. People will be voting for the SNP on May the 7th because they think they're anti-austerity. We may have to show them after that election, hey, talk's cheap. It's not enough to talk about opposing cuts. Now you've got the votes, you have to actually act in opposition to the cuts as well. What we're saying quite clearly is that a vote for the SNP on May the 7th is a vote for independence, it's a vote against nuclear weapons, and it's a vote against austerity. On that basis, I think it would be wrong, comrades, to endanger the idea of unseating not just the blue Tories and the yellow Tories, but the red Tories as well. This is the opportunity that we've been presented with here, that we've never had in our lifetime, to actually get rid of these charlatans who have dragged the Labour Party into the sewer as far as representing working class people are concerned. They no longer deserve to have the title of the Labour movement. They've betrayed the Labour movement. In the words of Jimmy Reid, when it came to Tony Blair taking over the Labour Party and dragging that party into a position of illegal wars and abolition of Clause 4, Part 4, the socialist clause of that Labour Party, he realised then that it wasn't the case that he was abandoning the Labour Party, but the Labour Party had abandoned the working class. That's what the Labour Party's done. Abandoned everything that the forefathers and foremothers fought for. They've got a cheek last week to talk about Mary Barber and the fight against the Rent Act of the interwar period. People like Mary Barber who are prepared to break the law in relation to their campaigns against the rent rises of the landlords trying to rip money from the families during the First World War. Do you think any of them would support a campaign breaking the law now? How dare they? How dare they use the names of the likes of Mary Barber? They don't have the right to use that tradition any longer. Brothers and sisters, I think we are presented here with a one-off opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to unite the radical, forward-thinking, visionary movement that emerged in the course of the referendum campaign. I, all of my political life, have called for the building of a mass party of the working class. That's what I believe in. Do you know what? It might not be the type of party that we envisage, but the SNP have become a mass party of the working class. That's a fact. They may be led by a middle class leadership, and they may be led by a leadership, some of whom are certainly not socialists and are free marketeers in their very fibres. But the truth is that party of almost 100,000 in Scotland has become a mass party, and working class people are now orientating towards it. We have a duty to point out the weaknesses, to say loud and clear when it comes to the SNP in cities like Dundee that they're letting down the movement by implementing cuts. They're letting down the movement by passing on austerity. We want to build a movement across Scotland of defiance to austerity, not compliance with austerity. That's the type of movement Solidarity wants to build. But in the circumstances of this general election, there is no party of the left of the SNP that are going to win. Tusk are they going to win? Green Party are they going to win? SSP are they going to win? But what the polls show, what the opinion polls show, is that in every single seat, the result could be based upon a few hundred votes. A few hundred votes. Brothers and sisters, in a normal circumstance, if a Tusk or a Green or a Socialist candidate was standing and they managed to poll 500 votes, I'd be saying, brilliant! That's 500 potential recruits to the Socialist movement, 500 potential members, absolutely brilliant. In this instance, if a Socialist candidate, a Tusk candidate, a Green candidate polls 500 votes, and the red Tory candidate gets in with 400 votes, then quite frankly, that's a defeat for the working class. Yeah. That's a defeat for the working class. And that's why this election is so crucial and so different. This isn't just another election, it's a unique election. And if we accept that, I think we have to accept the need for a unique set of tactics as well. The SNP, please don't insult any of the members here. The SNP is not a socialist party, we know that. We know that. Many members of the SNP are people who, as individuals, I will find it difficult to endorse. Fortunately, I've got in my own area a candidate who's a leading trade unionist, convener of trade unions for the SNP trade union group. You know, the guy is a reasonable candidate. When I compare him with Ian Davidson, no problem. However, let's not miss out the wood for the trees here. Let's look at the bigger, broader political picture. If we waken up on May the 8th and Scotland has voted decisively for a party that believes in unilateral nuclear disarmament, for a party that believes in the break-up of the British state, a party that believes that there should be investment instead of further cuts in relation to austerity, a party whose attitude to immigration is far to the left of the Labour, Tory or any other party, a party that believes in closing down the Dundee, the shame in society, a party that is opposed to the PFI, a party that works with the trade union movement in Scotland, a party, by the way, and I don't think it's right, I think nurses and other public service workers deserve more than 1%, more than a 1% wage rise. But there was an independent wage investigation that recommended a 1% wage rise for nurses and other public sector workers. These cretins in London aren't even prepared to give 1%. In Scotland, that party has accepted that position. In Scotland, that party isn't threatening the FPU pensions the way they're threatening in England. That's why the FPU is forced into strike action in England, but no strike action here in Scotland. Yes, let's attack that party for not being a socialist party and not having the policies the likes of which we would like to have. But by the same token, let's be realistic enough to realise that in the choice of political parties that exist in the mainstream right now, it is a left of centre party. To argue anything else, I think, would be to deny reality. Yes, we can point in this policy, that policy. None of us here agree that corporation taxes should be getting cut. Of course we don't. None of us agree that you should get rid of nuclear weapons but still be a member of NATO. Of course not. It's stupid. but in relation to the range of policies that exist within the other political parties, to deny that a vote for the SNP would be a vote to the left of the political spectrum, I think would just be plain wrong. It is a left of centre vote. I remember being interviewed by Bernard Ponsonby, 2007, some of you may remember this, after the election. And in Glasgow, in case some members, particularly the younger members here, probably don't remember, but in the 2007 Scottish general election, we narrowly missed out in being elected in Glasgow. 0.8% of the vote. That's how many, that's the percentage we missed out. There's a few hundred votes. By the way, that was at a time when 200,000 votes were ruined because of the voting paper. I don't know if you remember, the voting paper had the list candidate and the party candidate on the same paper, and people were to differentiate a left-hand vote and a right-hand vote, and all of you can remember, can't you, the amount of people that come out and says, oh, brilliant, no problem, I voted for SNP and Tommy. Now, of course, what they've done is they've voted for Alex Salmond on the left-hand part of the paper, and they voted for me on the left-hand side of the paper, but you were only allowed to have one vote on the left-hand side of the paper. 200,000 ballot papers spoiled on the basis of a deliberately complicated electoral system. But what happened? What happened in that election? The SNP actually won. And when I was interviewed by Bernard Ponsonby, he said, you must be disappointed, Mr. Sheridan, you've lost your seat. And I said, yes, I am very disappointed, personally. But politically, a party that had consistently opposed the invasion of Iraq, a party that had consistently promoted unilateral nuclear disarmament, a party that had opposed the PFI, had just won the Scottish election. In other words, I was personally disappointed, but I was politically pleased that Scotland had moved to the left. Scotland had moved away from allegiance to a party that abused their trust towards a party that wasn't socialist, but at least was to the left of that. That process, I would argue, brothers and sisters, has continued in the 2011 election, where the SNP did what the Constitutional Convention thought could never happen. The Scottish Constitutional Convention, when they thought up the Scottish Parliament, don't know if you're all aware of this, but it was deliberately drawn up with an electoral system based on the list and first past the post to force coalition governments. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to have a Scottish Parliament that was reliant on coalitions. No one party would ever win an outright majority. 2011, the pundits were confounded. SNP won an outright majority, and I would argue they never won an outright majority on the basis of membership of NATO, on the basis of cutting corporation tax for business. They won an outright majority on the consistent position against PFI, against nuclear weapons, against illegal wars, against the council tax. In other words, they won on the basis of the policies that are to the left of what the Labour Party stood for. Some people have made the point, in fact even some in the SNP have made the point, they won on the basis of standing for what the Labour Party used to stand for. And from my point of view, we have a position here in only a few weeks' time. A position here where if people unite from the Yes movement, we actually use as a strength what the Unionists used as a strength against us last September. What did the Unionists have in their favour? They had the ability to unite reactionary unity from the Tories and the billionaires and the millionaires with the Labour Party and the Lib Dems. They united in a reactionary campaign to try and frighten and bully and con people into voting no. They had unity on their side. Brothers and sisters, I think with this sort of electoral strategy, we have got unity on our side. They are divided. They want you to vote Tory, Lib Dem, Labour. In some seats, They're saying vote for anybody, even the Labour Party saying, if necessary, vote Tory to keep the SNP. That's how cretinous these people have become. They know that the unity they had in the referendum is blown asunder because they are trying to get the individual votes. We, on the other hand, if we can retain the unity of the Yes movement behind a strategy of lending, not becoming a member, not becoming an enthusiast, not becoming a campaigner for the SNP, lend them your vote on the basis of the principal position of independence, opposition to nuclear weapons, opposition to austerity, and then put them on the spot. People will stand up here today and say, the SNP won't fight austerity, the SNP won't fight for the working class. And you know what, you may be right. But I'll tell you what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to show the working class of Scotland that. We're going to have to put them on the spot and show that it's one thing in opposition to say we're going to get rid of nuclear weapons. It's one thing in opposition to say we're going to fight austerity. It's another thing when you're actually given an electoral mandate to then build the campaign in the communities and the trade unions and among the working class to defy the cuts and to expel the nuclear weapons. And we're going to be at the forefront of holding these people to these commitments and to these promises. So from my point of view, brothers and sisters, I hope that we have a debate and a discussion that's not based on a black or a white conclusion. The arguments that we're going to have today are not that somebody is all right and somebody else is all wrong. The arguments have got elements of which we can all agree on. Sometimes, however, if you're planning a holiday, some might want to go by bus and some might want to go by plane. You agree where you want to go, but maybe you disagree on how you're going to get there. That's the type of disagreement we're having here. This isn't, in my opinion, a principled disagreement. This is a tactical disagreement. I hope that we here today will decide that the one thing that unites us, the one thing that unites us above all else, is we are going to continue to build the socialist movement. We're not saying lend your vote to SNP and forget building the socialist campaign and the socialist movement. On the contrary, we are saying lend your vote to the SNP and then try and recruit people to the socialist campaign, to the socialist cause, that an independent Scotland that changes only the flag above the municipal buildings isn't the type of independent Scotland we're fighting for. The independent Scotland we're fighting for is independent Scotland that changes the size of the pension, the size of the living wage, that changes the classroom sizes, that changes the number of nurses and doctors that are employed in the health service. That's the independent Scotland we're fighting for. We're fighting on the slogan of another Scotland is possible. That's the independent Scotland we're fighting for. And I think the conclusion that can be drawn from a victory for the SNP on May the 8th is that's what Scotland's voted for as well. It will be, in my opinion, a victory for the working class, not just of Scotland, but of England and Wales as well. If we can wipe out the red, yellow and blue Tories in Scotland, because it will have been an advance for the working class, it will have been a shift to the left, and it will encourage those forces in England and Wales who also believe that those types of policies are popular. So you've got a poll here, folks, just so that you take some encouragement for this, you know. Some of you should get a hold of this, just out the last couple of days. And it was commissioned by the campaign for renationalisation of the railways. And it's a very, very interesting point. Questions asked to the public whether they think certain services should be run in the public sector or run in the private sector. Hospitals, roads and motorways, prisons, schools, postal delivery, railways, utilities. 74% of the public believe hospitals should be run in the public sector. 62% think roads and motorways should be in the public sector. 62% think prisons should be in the public sector. 62% think schools should be in the public sector. 54% think postal delivery should be in the public sector. 52% railways should be in the public sector. 47% think utilities should be in the public sector compared to only 30% who think they should be in the private sector. Unfortunately, they also asked about banks. We've still got a bit of work to do. Only 27% think the banks should be in the public sector. That's probably to do with the performance since we took them into the public sector in the last 3 years. Do you know the interesting thing about this survey? They also asked the question, whichever is most practical, whichever maintains standards best. In other words, a sort of a usual Labourite type of answer. Oh, people don't care who runs the services. It's just how they're delivered that matters. They don't care whether it's run in the public sector or the private sector. Well, I'm afraid you're wrong. When it comes to prisons, 62% think prisons should be in the public sector, 9% say whatever is most practical. Roads and motorways, 7% say what is most practical. Hospitals, 3% say whatever is most practical. And postal delivery, 13%, whatever's most practical. Railways, 14%, whatever's most practical. In other words, this is a damning refutation of the idea that people don't care whether something's run in the private sector or the public sector. They only care whether it produces results. People do care. People recognise that if you run these services in the public sector for the public interest, then you can improve delivery, you can improve the quality, and most important of all, when I watched last week the bosses of Centrica crying over their gins and tonics because their profits had fallen. It was, it was a disaster. Their profits have fallen to £1.4 billion. Centrica owners of British Gas. Oh, we're only making £1.4 billion profit. That's £1,400 million profit. But it's not enough for them. That's how greedy they are. It's not enough for them. We have to make the argument. If you can't make money selling gas and electricity, then you can't make money selling anything. This is something that is the essentials of life. And the essentials of life should be in the public sector, run as a service, not as a business. Instead of £1.4 billion going into the pockets of these millionaire shareholders and bosses, £1.4 billion from the sale of gas, electricity, water, should be going into schools and hospitals and other essential services. That's the argument. We know that there is potential. We know there's potential for a socialist movement in Scotland. We know that. I would argue that we have a debate today, we have a discussion today. We are friends, we are comrades. But what we do after the general election of May the 7th is we begin our campaign for May 2016, where it's not fought under first past the post, where you don't only have one vote, where you can argue that you're splitting the potential of the Yes movement. We have the right in 2016 to stand in all of the 8 regions of Scotland and argue a vote for solidarity is a vote for an independent socialist Scotland. A vote for solidarity is a vote for another Scotland. A vote for solidarity is a vote for a member of the Scottish Parliament that isn't going to go in there and become part of the comfy establishment. It's going to go in there and shake up the comfy establishment. It's going to go in there. It's going to go in there and fight on behalf of working class people across Scotland, supporting trade unions, supporting local communities, and being the leaders of the anti-austerity campaign. I hope we can agree, brothers and sisters, regardless of how you vote in relation to our discussions today, that we will agree that our campaign, Solidarity's campaign, begins on May the 8th for the Scottish Parliament elections, and it's a campaign that we intend to be victorious in as well. Thanks very much.
Can I see if we have a second and it can be formally for Tommy's statement, which in effect is a motion. So can Joyce Drummond, that's fine, that's condoned. Okay, now we're opening up now for debate, and we have a number of statements, stroke motions here. I think it would be best if the people who are coming up to speak to them make it clear they start where they're from, who they are, who they're representing, but also please say this is a statement as part of the discussion that's not to be voted on, or tell us points have to be voted on, just so that everybody's kept clear about it. And I'm going to give 5 minutes for the movers and 3 minutes for seconders and for other speakers. We'll open up for other speakers once we've dealt with the motions. And I'll start off with the Socialist Workers' Party, who's speaking on behalf. Thank you.
Just making it clear that when we handed out the statement when we come in, and you should have been able to pick it up, and it's not to be voted on, it's simply to explain the SWP's position with regard to the election that's coming up. So I hope everybody has a chance to read it. I want to start off by agreeing with a couple of things that Tommy said. I want to start off by agreeing with the way that he wants to conduct the debate and discussion, and the spirit in which we conduct the debate and discussion. I think it's quite right. Our comrades here have got disagreements, but we want to continue solidarity as an effective part of the left in Scotland, contribute to it and continue to work with comrades in solidarity. So I think that's right. We disagree on a point, but I think the spirit of that is quite right, so I want to agree with Tommy on that. I think secondly, I want to agree with what he said on the Labour Party. I think what he said on the Labour Party is absolutely right. I think people are terribly disappointed with the Labour Party, and they deserve everything that's happened to them. Deserve absolutely everything that's happened to them. And if they think that Jim Murphy is going to be the white knight, and that it's going to ride to the kind of defence and prop up the Scottish Labour Party, then they're sadly mistaken. I think people are sick of hearing his patronising voice. I speak slowly so you can understand what I'm saying, voice, I think people are sick of hearing that. Initially, I wasn't convinced that the collapse in the Labour vote in Scotland was real, but I believe it now. I think, the last few weeks, the last few months, I think the way the opinion polls have gone and the way people have responded to the debate and the discussion and the argument, I think we are in serious trouble. So I want to agree with Tommy on that. I think he's quite right in the Labour Party in Scotland. So, however, I do not think we can advocate a vote for the SNP. Our statement, I think, puts out some of the arguments, and it's not just about principle, I think Tommy's right, it's also about tactics as well. And I think a lot of his argument, I think, is contradicted by the fact that the SNP have possibly put themselves in a position where they will be in coalition with the Labour Party after the election. They have said, they have not ruled that out. They have said it. Miliband has not ruled it out. The Liberal Democrats have not ruled it out. Nicola Sturgeon has not ruled it out. Initially, the SNP's position was quite interesting. It was raised first by Salmon, and then Nicola Sturgeon then picked up on it and said there was markers in the sand, or there was lines that we would not cross, and it was things like Trench. It was arguing about an extra £150 billion in spending. But the closer they get to the election, her position has changed. She was never opposed to austerity, she was in favour of moderating austerity, but the position has changed. They're now talking about supporting a Labour government on an issue-by-issue basis. No longer the markers in the sand. So we're unfortunately in a position now of possibly say, vote SNP, get a Labour government. That is the reality of the situation we're now in. And I think we've got to be clear about that. So I think the tactical argument that Tommy put forward, and I understand it, I don't agree with it, the tactical argument that Tommy put forward is now contradicted, I think, by the SNP themselves. And if you want to see the reality of an SNP Labour coalition, you need no further than Edinburgh City Council, who are in the process of implementing £60 million worth of cuts. So that's the reality of it. That is the reality of it. Second, next issue I want to talk about is when Tommy's quite right, another thing I agreed on was we campaigned for yes in the referendum on the basis of the breakup of the British state. Absolutely right, and we continue to argue that. But I think we've also got to say we cannot leave the argument about what type of Scotland we want until after the election. We've got to put down an argument concretely in the here and now that relates to people about what type of Scotland we want after the election and after the referendum. Sorry?
A few minutes, just
okay,
a few seconds left.
Couple more minutes. Right. The referendum was never about the SNP. It was about people looking for change, people feeding into arguments and policies about the chance of Scotland being a different country, which rejected austerity, rejected war, all the rest of it. It was never about the SNP. That feeling's not gone away. That's why Labour are in trouble. The point behind standing candidates at the election, and I'm supporting the Tusk, and the SWP are part of the Tusk coalition, is we put down a marker for the future. We relate to the people, and that feeling in Scotland that's not gone away, and put down a marker for the type of Scotland we want to fight for and argue for after the election. Final point, and this is about Greece, I think, because Greece is important. Tommy never mentioned it. Because there's two things about Greece I think that's important. There's something positive and there's something negative. The positive side is it shows how radical left parties can grow from a situation of being marginalised to actually being parties which people will vote for very, very quickly. Things change dramatically in Greece, and it's happening in Spain as well. It's not just a phenomenon that's been left in Greece, and also in Ireland as well, when you can see left parties actually picking up votes because people have been prepared to stick with the arguments and put the markers down. But also, there's also another side of the point, because Syriza have been had to make a deal with the Troika, with the EEC, the Central Bank and the IMF. In other words, they've had to accept the policies of austerity being placed on them. And that's because they fudged. They fudged on issues like the currency and on the EU. That's the danger we've got, Tommy. If we fudge on the SNP, we can be in exactly the same position. And that's why I think I don't agree with your position and why you should be supporting and campaigning for Tusk in the election. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Trying to second that motion?
It's not a motion.
It's a statement, sorry. It's all quite confusing statements and motions. Right, I'll move on to Socialist Party, and I know you've got a statement here which has also got a voting element, so Philip, I'll leave you to explain that. If you could do it in 5 minutes, that would be good.
And the only problem, we put forward an alternative position for the conference after Tommy spoke for half an hour, as I only get 5 minutes to try and respond. I'll do my best. I think that first point to make is that we're bringing back this motion, very similar motion to what we put forward in October at the Solidarity Conference back then. And the point we made then, the point we're making today, is that there is a fundamental political disagreement in front of us. We don't believe it's tactical, we believe it's political. There were 1.6 million people voted yes in the referendum. We were all involved in the campaign, Hope Over Fear, the Socialist Campaign for Independence. That was not a unified movement. I disagree with Tom. Why was it not unified? Because the leaders of the SNP want independence to pursue their own political agenda, which is to boost profits for big business, to cut their taxes, to maintain the profit system, to maintain capitalism, and to drive down the wages and conditions of working class people, because that's what it means in practice today, doesn't it? Capitalism means austerity on steroids. The Hope Over Fear campaign we're all involved in, for us, was an expression of the mood, not for the SNP, but the mood to the left of the SNP. It was very pronounced, it was very strong. Tens of thousands of people came to public meetings to hear Tommy and others make the case for a fundamentally different vision of Scotland, completely different from the leaders of the SNP who want to cut the taxes for corporation tax. We believe that after the referendum, Tommy and others, we should have launched a new formation, a new party, a new movement to appeal to all those who've been mobilised to the Hope Over Fear campaign to join the socialist movement. We disagreed with Tommy, who 48 hours after the referendum called for people to vote SNP. Tommy did that immediately after the referendum. I think that led to thousands of people joining the SNP. Tommy didn't ask them to join, he just said vote. But in reality it was given Tommy's authority a political stamp on that party, and it had a major effect. Let's see what's happened since the referendum. Of the SNP, with tens of thousands of new members, refused to implement cuts and austerity. No, they've gone on the rampage up and down Scotland. They're closing schools, they're slashing jobs, they're implementing Tory cuts to the letter. How can a socialist organisation call for a vote for a party like that? We need to build a political alternative and stand in elections. Now, our argument is that Tommy is making political concessions to the SNP by calling for a vote. In his speech today, he's made some good points, but he's also made some political concessions as well. Tommy is in danger, and his solidarity would be as well, of running around after the SNP, trying to cloak them in an anti-austerity program that they don't deserve. Tommy says the SNP are anti-austerity. They're not. They're implementing austerity to the letter in council after council where they've influenced and through the Scottish Government, and it's clear if they do end up in a confidence and supply arrangement, not a coalition with Labour at Westminster, but if they agree a relationship, it means they're going to vote through cuts at Westminster as well. I also disagree with Tommy when he says that the SNP are prepared to work with the trade unions. That's not the experience of working class people or of the trade union organisations up and down the country. 50,000 jobs have gone in the public sector since the SNP won control of the Scottish Parliament. Pay caps, that's what you're talking about. This 1% deal for NHS workers in Scotland, that's a pay cut. They've introduced a pay cap across the whole of local government and across the NHS. That is no friend of the trade union movement if you've got a political party implementing austerity and implementing the cuts. And Tommy's excellent points on public ownership. Absolutely, the support that exists for public ownership for nationalisation. Fortunately, it doesn't extend to the SNP leaders who are opposed to the renationalisation of the gas and electricity companies, who will shoot you down in flames if you call for the nationalisation of the oil industry. In the last week alone, what have the SNP been doing? They've been running around calling for tax cuts for the oil companies, for tax credits for the oil companies, for investment credits for the oil companies. You know, not as if they haven't made enough money through the exploitation of gas and oil in Scotland over the last number of years. There's no way forward for working class people through the SNP. Tommy's right, of course. Tens of thousands have joined the SNP. There's no argument about that. But will they stay in the SNP when they see the real reality? And is it not the job of us as socialists to point out that this organisation, this party, offers absolutely no
That's 5 minutes.
way forward?
I'll give you another.
Two points to finish, Rosemary, thank you. I think our alternative motion is saying that the role of solidarity up till now has been to support the likes of Tusk, the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition, or the RMT Trade Union, socialist organisations, anti-cuts campaigners, to put our alternative. We need our alternative to be available during the election, don't we? We can't go around the room calling for a vote for the SNP when that party is attacking the working class up and down the country. I'm not prepared to do that. The Socialist Party will not be associated with that policy, which would mark a significant turn to the right by Solidarity if it adopts this position. It's necessary to call things as they are, to say things as they have to be said, and to do what needs to be done. There is no way forward. We have to turn away from this position that's been put forward by Tommy. We need to build a working class socialist, pro-trade union, pro-working class political alternative. We can't postpone that for 6 weeks, for 8 weeks or whatever. We have to turn to that, and I appeal to you to support the motion, to support the campaign of Scottish Tusk, in the general election to help us build an alternative. Our votes will be small, but what is clear is the SNP are a dead end, and we cannot give them political support, which is what is being proposed by Tommy and by the executive statement. Thanks.
Now part of that is a motion, Philip, so I need a seconder for that. Is somebody coming to speak?
I'll second it formally, but can I come in later if I need to?
Yes, of course.
Thanks.
Right, we'll move on now to the Cardonald branch motion. Who's moving that? Very good.
Thanks, Chair. Tommy Sheridan, Cardonald branch, moving our motion. And as you will see, conference, it's a very simple motion in terms of the word count anyway. But what it's saying is that we would endorse a tactical voting strategy to support the SNP at this election. We consider that this is a momentous election that faces us in May. We saw the move to the left, as has already been eloquently positioned by the other speakers in relation to the referendum campaign. But in this election, we very clearly have the main parties who've got the political wherewithal and the finances in terms of standing in these elections. And we've got a stark choice as the people of Scotland. Do we vote red, yellow or blue Tory? Do we have an option? Well, we do in many ways. Certainly in Cardonald, the position that we have is that we've got a choice of voting for a recognised trade unionist who's fought and campaigned as a member of Unison for many, many years. Or we can vote for a Labour candidate who is a guy called Ian Davidson, so you might have seen him, and the position that he's taken in terms of the independence discussions. Or we could vote for the Tusk candidate, who is a member of the SSP, who were the collaborators with the News of the World, etc. I know who people will be voting for, and it certainly won't be for the latter. Can I just take up some of the points that have been raised by Philip and the other speaker? Philip talks about our position about post the referendum and that we should have launched a new party, a new mass workers party. Well, I'm sorry, but what is solidarity supposed to be? Why do we need to launch a new party when we all already have an established party here in Scotland that's got a brand name that's already known? It's got a leader whose name is already well known and was even more publicised during the Hope Over Fear campaign that toured and spoke to over 100,000 people during the campaign for the referendum. I don't think we need another party. I don't think we need to establish another new party. And I think that we are being very pragmatic with the position that we're asking you to take this afternoon. Pragmatic in the sense that no Tusk candidate has any chance whatsoever of winning a seat in this general election. And I think if, hand on hearts, and no disrespect to those who are going to stand as Tusk candidates, that you would honestly believe that you will win a seat. I think it's disingenuous as well to talk about Greece and Scotland in the same breath, because in Scotland we have not had to face the terrible austerity that people in Greece have faced, where very much the middle classes, in terms of teachers, doctors, nurses, have had their jobs cut, have lost their jobs, have had their wages cut. We have people who, because they can't afford their electricity, have had to turn off dialysis machines. Fortunately in Scotland we've never yet reached that point. But the other question I would ask in all of this is, we're talking about Tusk as the trade union coalition. Where are the trade unionists in many of the key? Where are the trade union leaders in relation to this anti-cuts, anti-austerity campaign? Because the leader of the RMT is standing for the Greens. He's not part of Tusk. He is actually a Green candidate standing down south. So where are these trade unions? Where is the fight within the trade unions at the moment? Because certainly my trade union in Unison, I don't see it. We are getting, yes, Philip's right, and others will probably come up and speak to this. We are seeing cuts across the trade in terms of jobs. We've got Glasgow City Council, which is a Labour controlled council, now want to do away with another 350 jobs of cordial workers, who want to introduce a campaign of 12-hour shifts that are going to cut across the working time directive. They're going to mean that workers are technically breaking the law. So I would argue that we are taking a pragmatic stand, and I would ask you, conference, to vote for the Cardona motion today. Thank you.
My Joyce. 3 minutes.
Joyce from Cardona branch. I'd just like to second what Ian Lynn has already said and pick up on a few points from Philip and the SWP statements. Philip, you're right, there's no point in kicking about. We need to say what needs to be said, and that's what I'm going to try and do as fraternal way as possible. You're saying about Tommy coming out and speaking in support of the SNP, but Tusk declared their candidates before this conference had agreed anything, so that's a wee bit pot kettle. The trade unions, I'm sorry, but again, where are they? And I'm not just talking about not fighting against cuts in jobs, I'm talking about actually not fighting for their members who are part ATOS, decision makers in ATOS, who are actually killing people with their decisions. People are dying, committing suicide, and the trade unions are letting that go on. So, yes, our local candidate is a trade unionist, but he's one of the good guys, in my opinion. We don't have really a choice, we don't have a Tusk candidate. We've got, apparently some deal was done between Tusk and the other party whose name I shall not mention, and that's what we've got rampaging about our streets. Well, I don't deal with collaborators, so no chance of me voting. I'm left with Chris, who's a decent trade unionist, decent member of the SNP. I think as well, back to the trade unions, where are they all? They're all still, as far as I'm aware, nobody's broken the Labour link. So they're all still in bed with Labour anyway. Once the trade unions come out and break that Labour, sorry Ken and FBU, once the trade unions come out and break that link, then I would have more respect for them, and that's not about individual trade unionists that fight against cuts, that's about the union hierarchy, who, let's face it, all want to climb the greasy pole. None of them are representing the working class. They're on phenomenal salaries. At least our people will take an average skilled worker's wage. When they're elected, these trade union guys, on the whole, don't have a clue what it's like to be working class. And finally, again, we do already have solidarity. We don't need a new working class party. For standing in these elections, one, we've cut it too short, but secondly, we don't have money. Solidarity is solely Scottish. We don't have any funding coming from England. We don't have any funding for papers, and maybe if the platforms within Solidarity would, as a start, which I've already asked at conference, put Solidarity's name on their merchandise, their papers, and start building Solidarity, that would go some way towards having Solidarity members standing. And in conclusion, I'd ask, please, support the Cardona motion, because the most important thing in this election
minutes, Joyce,
is to break the British state.
Thank you. Now we'll open up for debate. If anyone wants to speak, it would be a good idea if you came down maybe to the side here, John's sitting. and then I can take your order. Just make sure you say who you are, you know, if you represent a platform or whatever, and you've got 3 minutes. Okay, so I see Angela, do you indicate you want to start? But if you came along to the side, it would make life a lot easier. We would know who's coming next.
Right, Angela McCormick, member of SWP and Tusk candidate in Glasgow North. Right, okay, I've got loads of points here, right? I'm going to start with the fact that we all know, so I'll state some obvious and then I'll put some points. Scotland has been changed, Labour is in complete disarray. Now, I'm just going to make a comparison to Greece, and I don't think it's valid, and I'll tell you this, PASOK, the Labour Party in Greece that for decades was what was there, has been completely reduced to rubble. There are many similarities, and the reason we're socialists looking in the world is because we want to draw inspiration and take lessons. Look at the state of PASOK. The other thing is Syriza was a new formation, and as a member of SWP I have criticisms there, engaging in debate, but you can't deny it was a coming together. And actually in the future, solidarity, I would argue, needs to be open, and I think is open, to look to new coalitions that can smash the whole of the Westminster politics and austerity for good, and we need to be open to that generally. We need to hold on to the hope of the referendum. We need to constantly remind ourselves and others round about us what was on the agenda and what was possible, and I'll tell you why that's important. We cannot lower our expectations to be thankful that at last we've got people who are a wee bit to the left of the Labour Party. Let's be honest, if you're in a desert, a glass of water looks like a lake to a thirsty man. Doesn't it take much to be the left of this Labour mob? And I hope they are punished, I absolutely hope they are. But as a socialist, we need to continue doing what we're doing. The other things I want to make is, I understand the support for the SNP, however my main argument is we can do better. This is a unique general election, but that actually makes it for me even harder to understand why we can't, with this unique opportunity, take that opportunity. Take that opportunity to talk to the people that we campaigned with, to talk to those that are working with the SNP, that are maybe thinking of voting them, to say that we can still do better. We can continue to do better, we can build on it. The other thing is as well, no matter the difficulties of 2015, it is absolutely clear 2016 is a far better terrain for the left and socialists. Nobody would argue with that. But there's processes that take place, and there is a battle just now between the leadership of the SNP and their version of the world, and their version is a break-up with the British state, which no, let's remind ourselves, is very different from yours, for the hearts and minds of working-class people who are looking for a better socialist Scotland. So that's why I would go along with putting a socialist alternative. It's why I'm part of Tusk. I understand totally. My God, I live in the real world. Go and talk to working-class people. They drive towards the SNP, but I totally disagree with it. I think it's a mistake, and I think it sells ourselves short. We can work with people, we can continue to celebrate the punishment of Labour, but that doesn't mean to say that everything means going behind them in a vote. And also,
That's 3 minutes, Angela.
Is it? Right, okay. And lastly, the idea that Tusk or left candidates hold the balance of power and will be held accountable, I don't think it's a fair one. If the SNP can't smash Labour, my God, that's their fault, it's on them. And secondly, nobody's telling the Green Party how to stand. Do you know what I mean? It's not as if it's only the SNP or nothing. And lastly, as a college lecturer of trade unionists, I've been arguing against the Scottish Government, and it's not been easy when we know it's Westminster cuts. The way I put it is, you can't blame, you can't say a big boy in Westminster done it and ran away. I've been campaigning with students and fellow lecturers, we've lost thousands of jobs have gone in FE. Thousands.
Angela.
They've cut us by
Right, please.
Aye, alright then. My thing is, we can do better, be realistic, demand the impossible.
From Edinburgh. The constituency I live in is Edinburgh South West, and unfortunately the only two socialist candidates in Edinburgh are not in South West. There's Colin Fox, in South. I'm quite glad that I don't live in South. And there's a Tusk candidate in East who is a Solidarity member, and I'd be very happy to vote for her, but unfortunately I'm not in her constituency. This just leaves me with the Greens, who are not socialist, some of them are, but a lot of them are environmentalists who don't seem to understand that what they want for the environment is not going to be attained under capitalism. There's also the Labour Party, but, well, Jim Murphy couldn't even turn out to vote against the bedroom tax. So, as Tommy said, this just leaves me thinking about the SNP. Now, I was quite happy to campaign for the yes vote along with SNP members, although I suspected that their motivation for independence was rather different from mine. They being nationalists, and I, as a socialist, being an internationalist. So I've decided to look at who is actually the candidate for the SNP, and I'm going to try and contact her and grill her. She's called Diana Cherry, and she's an advocate, which doesn't sound particularly good to start with, but who knows? I'll try. I'm very, very unhappy at the moment with the SNP Minister Fergus Ewing, I think he's called Fergus. Terrible things he's been doing. He seems to be either in bed with or in the pocket of the Duke of Buccleuch. Now, having lived in Selkirk, I know a lot about the Duke of Buccleuch, and none of it's any good. And what Fergus Ewing has done is given his support to underwater gold gasification. What a mouthful, underwater gold gasification. And he supported licenses for this being given to the Duke of Buccleuch. The other thing he did was to turn down some wind farm, a wind farm which was supported by the community in favour of another local wind farm supported by, guess who? The Duke of Buccleuch. So I think it's very important for everybody to look not just at the SNP as a party, but actually to look at who they are standing in your constituency and what their attitudes are to important things.
Thank you, conference. Welcome to Central Region. This is the first conference here. Welcome. I just want to support the Cardonald motion because I believe that history will be made on May the 7th, when for the first time in Scottish history, the majority of the people will vote for an independent Scotland and the break-up of the British state. This to me is what we're aiming for, because we can put the socialist and independent when we get it, but we've got to move with the tactics that we need. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Eric Stevenson, Glasgow, Socialist Party Scotland. A couple of remarks. Firstly, before I look at the motion that's been put forward by the SPS, I think in Tommy's contribution to begin with, he acknowledged that Solidarity probably wasn't the finished article. He was calling, everyone agrees, the idea of a new workers' party, so the idea that Solidarity is a finished article, I don't think is the case. Solidarity also, as I understand it, did support Tusk and has never actually supported the SNP as a policy. So I think that's useful to remember. I think that the motion that's been put forward by Philip I agree with, not because the SPS demand for obedience, but the position is correct. The strategy, I think, which demands obedience is what is good for working class people. And I believe it would be a folly for socialists to call for a vote for the SNP. If the SNP were really concerned about supporting working people in Scotland, then why was it they did not organise or say that they were going to not implement the cuts? Why did they not organise campaigns in the communities, amongst trade unionists, amongst community groups, to actually campaign for the money that has been stolen from Scotland, returned to Scotland? If they had done that, they would have won the referendum vote for Scotland. And I think our position would be probably a bit different from what it is today. I remember briefly speaking to, what's her face? The leader of the SNP at an election polling station a couple of years ago. Nicola, that's her name. I mean, I don't know Nicola, I just happened to be at the polling station and she was standing there, so I had a wee quick word with her. And I asked her why the SNP, and I suggested that we could maybe vote for the SNP if she actually made it clear that she was against the cuts and going to involve herself in a campaign. And she said that was not possible. We couldn't do that. We cannot campaign against the cuts. We have got to implement the cuts. And the position today is no less than it was a couple of years ago. They have and they will implement the cuts that are going to face the Scottish people. They're a party of big business, and therefore I don't think that we can vote or ask people to vote for the SNP. So I'd ask you to vote for the resolution coming from the SPS today. There was also a question I'd like to ask. I did email the question when I received the documentation for the conference. I know that Gail's unwell, so that's probably why I haven't received a reply. That's not from me, is it? Okay, just 2 seconds. Tommy has been putting forward and advocating that we should vote for the SNP for some time. In the last conference, I understood that we were going to have a recall conference in February to agree this position. But yet, there's been meetings over the past number of weeks. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend. They were calling for the vote for the SNP before this actual conference or before the party has made that decision. I recognise that we've all got personal views and Tommy's entitled to his personal view the same as everybody else. But surely as a convener of solidarity, it's not right that he puts the position of solidarity forward at meetings before solidarity has actually made that decision. So maybe Tommy should write up. Let's be finished. Cheers.
Thank you. Colleagues, I intend to carry on until 2 o'clock and then have a half-hour comfort break and come back to this debate. The comrade with the striped sweater sitting beside Ian Kerr, you want in on this debate? Or is it Ian? Right. Okay, Ian, 3 minutes.
Okay. First I'd like to start congratulating Tommy on correctly analysing exactly where we are in the run-up to the general election. My problem is that I think, having analysed the situation as well as he has, he's then come to the wrong conclusion. That's why I'll be supporting Tusk. I should have said at the start, Ian Kerr, Ayrshire Solidarity Branch and member of the SPS. There are many reasons why I would have a problem with this statement. I will limit myself to a few. What Tommy's suggesting is lending a vote to the SNP. What that actually means is lending your trust to the SNP, because that's what vote is. And that's not lending a card to get. That's not even lending a card. And let me tell you something about trust. It's not a boomerang. It doesn't come back. Take the scenario that we tell people to vote SNP, and then 6 weeks or 6 months down the line, somebody comes to me and says, I've just lost my job or a vital service I relied on because of the SNP administration, either at council or government level. Now, you people told me to vote for them. Why should I ever trust you again? I think that's why Solidarity will be making a fatal mistake to go down this road. Everything Tommy's suggesting is predicated on the fact that the SNP will do what they say they're going to do. Now, there isn't a scintilla of history to support our position, which is why I would argue that we should be supporting socialist candidates, Tusk candidates, wherever they are, and I understand that there aren't nearly enough of them, or as many as we would like. But I'm talking about candidates with a proven historical record of fighting cuts, fighting austerity. I think that's the route Solidarity should be taking. And I don't think it's a tactical question. I think it is a question of principle. When we make a political recommendation to the working class, it should be based on principle. Cheers.
See you. Robin Morgan.
I'm Tommy Sheridan and I'm speaking against the Socialist Party motion. This may seem strange as I voted for a very similar motion prior to the last general election, which was basically vote Tusk or Solidarity and elsewhere for the best socialist candidate. The difference this time in this motion is encapsulated around the opposition to this lending our vote. Now I think this, despite the preamble where there was acknowledgement of the referendum campaign, this essentially ignores the referendum and attempts to write that out of history and deny the real enthusiasm for change expressed by hundreds of thousands of nearly working class and young people open to socialism, who quite frankly want to give the Labour Party a kicking for its deals and continued alliance with the Tories. The SPS motion completely fails to advance the real possibilities open to workers and communities across Scotland to destroy forever the demoralising effect the Labour Party's stranglehold of our elected representation has in political options and expressions of dissent. No one is joining Labour. Almost all purported socialists have left it. It exists to serve the interests of its elected representatives wedded to patronage, expenses, self-importance and British imperialism. Hence their policies which are in their manifesto of continued austerity, support for Trident, opposition for independence. But Labour can only be destroyed by removing its representatives. It's entirely a patronage regime. If after the election sufficient of its MPs remain, its continuous welfare effects without members, with MPs of influence and the aspirations of the referendum generation could be crushed. And here we come to the crunch. Only the SNP can defeat Labour. Now I campaigned for a yes alliance, and the SNP, to our shame and possible regret, denied everybody it. However, the Greens, the SSP and indeed Tusk to pretend they can in a first past the post election with any seats would be delusional. And of course, Socialist Party Scotland don't hold any such delusions. But, so why the standing? Now, I've made the same point to the SSP and say why are they standing. I've made the same point to the Greens, why are they standing? It's ridiculous. We, as Solidarity, all our socialist arguments against austerity, all our criticisms of SNP, all our criticism of Labour through leaflets without standing. We can campaign our entire programme and say why we are socialists, how we want to transform Scotland without standing. What we're doing is calling right, last point again. We're losing sight of the possibility. We used to say we supported the Labour Party like a rope supports a hanging man. It's standing on an iron brew crate at the moment. So let's kick away the box and break its neck.
John Perrin from Fife. First of all, Collins, I think it's going to be a bit frustrating and confusing to be honest, about just what this debate is about. This debate isn't about socialism versus nationalism. It's not about how good the SNP is or how bad the SNP is. It's about tactics. Now, the Cardonald branch has put forward a tactic. The tactic is that we want people to vote SNP to get a big crowd of SNP MPs elected into Parliament so they can do as much damage to the British state as possible. I think that's a decent enough thing to do. Why is it that, I've got no illusions in the SNP, why is it that Labour have taken such a king? It's one, yes, certainly it's because they aligned themselves with the Tories during the referendum campaign, but it goes back further than that. The Labour Party adopted the Conservative economic strategy of Margaret Thatcher in the 1980s, that is to invest money in the service industries, banking, finance, mortgages, credit, the services that have been so good to us over the last 10 years, and take that money and take the money from the manufacturing industries to invest in these industries. And that's what makes the economy strong, because there's a lot more profit in it, so it's understandable from their point of view. But from a working class point of view, it's an absolute disaster for us, because it also creates unemployment, low wage, and so people aren't getting fooled by the Labour Party anymore. That's what New Labour was all about, by the way. It was adopting conservative economic strategy. So it's built up over the years, and that was the final thing that just burst the dam, was the referendum, certainly in Scotland. But so what about the SNP? I think the SNP will be in exactly the same position. The SNP have never really been put to task, because they've never been in control of the Scottish economy. It's always been in control of Westminster. And when they do become independent, then they will be taken to task. And the Scottish people will see the SNP for what they are. Because they'll be in the same position as Syriza. I don't know why people are bringing up Syriza. I think if you put hanging your hopes on Syriza, comrades, you're going to be very, very disappointed. Because they are putting forward anti-austerity promises while trying to still align themselves to capitalism. There's no way that Syriza's going to win. And by the same token, there's no way that the SNP are going to win. Once we get independence, they are going to be in the same position as the Labour Party are now. They're going to have to adopt the same economic strategy. Let's be under no illusions about that as socialists, because they're not a socialist party. I think I'd like to disagree with Philip there when he said that the
That's time, Philip.
John. Right, okay, I'll leave it there first.
Graham Campbell and Tricia McQueen. Is there anybody else waiting to speak? Got one other, two more. Well, I'm going to take Graham and then we'll have a break and we'll come back, complete the speakers and then have the vote. Okay? Are you going to wait? Oh, you've been waiting. Look, I didn't know that. Right. Well, I'll take you now and Graham after the break, okay?
Hi, I'm standing here as somebody who's never ever been political in her life until the referendum. And I'm also standing here as someone who has a knee-jerk reaction. I became a member of the SNP right after the referendum as well. What's your name, please? My name's June. The last couple of months since the referendum, I think what I want to ask you is to do, have faith in the Scottish people. We have watched and let Labour completely become something that it wasn't meant to be. My parents, my grandparents have been completely let down, and the reason why was apathy and this total loyalty without actually really watching what is going on. And what I want to say is my experience over the last few months. Everyone I know is watching every single political party that they are thinking of voting for very, very carefully. And I'm so glad, is it Jock who was up here before me, came up before me because he's right. Let's give SNP the opportunity to show us what they're all about. Let's get them here and let's start holding. It's not just about holding Labour and Tory and everybody else's feet to the fire. We need to be holding every single political party's feet to the fire, whoever gets into power. I have a lot of friends who, yes, absolutely, we need to vote SNP now, we need to vote SNP. Now, if Solidarity are doing what they're doing and SNP go and let everyone down, who do you think people are going to turn to? Because already I've turned to Solidarity, because already I see that the SNP are not what I thought they would be. However, I want a Scottish voice in Westminster, and the only way we're going to do that in May is by voting the SNP. Then we judge them, then we turn to the very people who were very willing to have a Yes Alliance, who wanted to pull the Yes movement together, and that is something people will not forget. So that's all I wanted to say.